Hey gang, welcome to Mzansi and USA News. This is my favorite Republican senator from Louisiana, John Kennedy. He is dealing with transgender issues on this monologue. Very, very much of an eye-opener, done with such a sense of humor. Yet he is shooting from the hip with such pinpoint accuracy, it's unreal. Listen to this and be educated.
With me today, Mr. President, are two of my valuable colleagues from my office, Ms. Maddie Dibble and Mr. Christian Ami. And I'm glad to have them today and thank them for their good work. You know, Mr. President, from afar, being an NFL football player looks like a lot of fun. But if you've ever been down on the field when those guys are playing, it is brutal. I mean, it is brutal. Some NFL linemen weigh over 300 pounds, and it's all muscle. A lot of NFL quarterbacks, they're pretty big themselves, but they're not 300 pounds. Probably missed their high school days when they only had a chubby 16-year-old lineman trying to tackle him under those Friday night lights. We have a player on the New Orleans Saints that we're all proud of in Louisiana, Mr. Cam Jordan. I'll bet even Mr. Jordan, who's a starting defensive end for the Saints and one of the best in the NFL, has days when he wishes his competitors were only half as big as the ones he faces every Sunday and every day in practice. But think about this. If Mr. Jordan were to announce tomorrow that he identifies as a 16-year-old, and if Mr. Jordan then tried to join the football team at Zachary High School, my alma mater, no one in America would pretend that Mr. Jordan is actually a student athlete with the right to take the field along with teenage boys. I mean, most Americans would think you're from outer space. They would be thinking, what planet did he just parachute in from? I mean, every sane person in Louisiana and on planet Earth would understand that a 34-year-old NFL player has no place tackling kids who haven't even been to the prom yet, for God's sakes. Not only would it be unfair to allow Mr. Jordan on the Zachary High School football team, he'd probably send a few kids to the hospital.
True that.
In the first quarter. In the first minute. Men and women.
He's going somewhere with this line of argumentation. So please pay attention and exercise patience because there's a lot to be learned here. I'm just going to rewind it for a few seconds.
In the first quarter. In the first minute. Men and women don't take the field against one another for the same reasons. It's fundamentally unfair. And women could get hurt. Yet there are activists in our country today. I wish I didn't have to say this. There is a president in our White House who who think the laws of physics and biology don't apply to transgender athletes. And these activists and President Biden are happy to destroy athletic opportunities for every woman in America to prove their point. These activists and President Biden are working throughout the country, you've read about it in the media, to force biological women and girls to compete against biological men and boys. The ACLU is one of those supporters. The ACLU, for example, says it's a, quote, fact that, quote, trans girls are girls. Now, these activists and President Biden say that it is a, quote, a myth. They call it a myth that transgender female athletes have a physical advantage over biological girls.
Well, either they did not take their chronic medication or they are on crazy tablets. There's no way you can explain that. More so if you consider the evidence that Kennedy is going to be presenting right here in this same video.
As an aside, if that is the case, if this is a myth and not a fact, then you have to wonder why so few transgender men who are actually biological women are anxious to play on male sports teams. But I digress. The fact is, you don't need a graduate degree in anatomy to know that these claims are specious. They just are. Both the medical and the physical science and the data show that men have obvious and significant advantages over female athletes. I mean, unless you're the reason that your parents drank, you know that. It's just a fact. That's how our Creator made us. Even before birth, baby boys begin developing different hormones and skeletal structures that help them outperform women athletically. Testosterone exposure in the womb, before the baby is born, alters brain development in boys. This improves their motor skills, increases their aggression, two traits that benefit competitive athletes. Boys also experience what doctors and scientists call a, quote, mini puberty. They call it a mini puberty in the womb. So that shortly after birth, baby boys will gain weight faster than baby girls. That's biology. That's not political ideology, that's biology. And that ultimately contributes to boys being taller than girls on average later in life.
Now, of course, people like to argue without facts. Just pay attention, look around you, look in your family, think about all your relatives. Just go out in the street, look at the people around you. Boys versus girls. You will see what Kennedy is talking about. Boys are slightly taller. Their shoulders are slightly broader than that of women. The growth of a male person is not the same as the growth of a female person, regardless of how they choose to identify. So that identification does not change anything, including taking hormones for that matter, does not reduce the lung capacity of a male child, because these advantages take place in the womb, not when after the child has been born. Even those changes that continue after the child has been born, there's no evidence that this hormone treatment that gets to be given to people reverse, for example, the size of the heart, the size of the lungs, the testosterone that has been fed into the brain of the child as early as during the time they are in the womb, which directly affects their abilities to do certain things which girls find themselves unable to do because they didn't have the same advantage. So to argue that this is about trans rights is nothing but, as Kennedy puts it, and I think he's being very kind, it's a specious argument. It's a specious argumentation which ought not to hold, at least amongst reasonable people. Let's continue.
Differences between boys and girls, as I think most of us know, explode during puberty. They explode during puberty. Girls develop hearts that are 14% smaller than boys.
Did you hear that?
Girls develop smaller lungs, that are 12% smaller than men on average. That helps boys take in more oxygen. Duh. It helps them pump blood more efficiently than girls can. That's biology.
Which explains why Usain Bolt could run that fast, whilst Fraser Price could not run that fast even in her prime, was even the great Flojo could not run that fast even in her prime. You get the point? Look at the heart of a girl, 14% smaller than that of a boy. Lungs, 12% smaller. Now, don't underestimate that, because it talks to how much air you can hold in when you breathe in, whether you are running as an athlete, because they do a lot of breathing in and holding within the short distances, and same with swimming. So where you have to use this physical energy, same with weightlifting, this big heart and big lungs gives a tremendous advantage to the male person, to the person who is biological male. This is very, very important. Let us proceed. In fact, before we proceed, you would note that Flojo set up a 100-meter record of 10, what was it? I'll tell you now, 10:54, 10 seconds, 10.54 seconds. That was in 1988. Now, if you care to note, the second last man in the 100-meter final in the same Olympics ran faster, ran about 10.11 seconds, ran faster than Flojo, the second last man. I'm not comparing Flojo with the fastest man, which was Ben Johnson, who was later disqualified, and Carl Lewis was number 2, ran 9.99 seconds. Can you see that? No woman up until this day, from 1988 which is 30, how many years? 36 years later, no woman has been able to run 9.99. Can you see that? And 9.99, breaking the 10-second barrier, is something that boys have been doing for fun. Men have been doing for fun, even at college students have been doing this for fun. But let's continue listening to Kennedy, because I love how he breaks it down, including giving you the example of one of my favorite athletes in America, Felix. Let's continue.
And that gives boys a clear edge in endurance sports, sports like running, cycling, swimming, rowing. Girls also during puberty, again, a biological fact, develop a wider pelvis on average, and this decreases the amount of force their legs can exert when they're lifting or kicking or pedaling. That's another relative disadvantage when you compare female athletes to male athletes. Boys develop broader shoulders. I think most of us know that. Common sense is illegal in Washington, D.C., but it's not in the rest of America, and I think Americans know that. Boys develop broader shoulders to make space for more upper.
Did you hear what he just said? Common sense is illegal in the DC. I love Kennedy's sense of humor. Let's continue. I just want to hear that again.
Washington, D.C., but it's not in the rest of America, and I think Americans know that. Boys develop broader shoulders to make space for more upper body muscle mass. Again, a biological fact. It's hard to think of a sport, I can't think of one, in which a higher muscle to fat ratio isn't helpful. The average boy will also grow 5 inches taller than the average girl during this time. Even when women and men are the same height, men have higher levels of bone density, which helps them move more forcefully and escape more injuries in athletics. A biological fact. Women are at a competitive physical disadvantage against men from birth. And this is especially clear at the very elite levels of athletics. Top-ranked high school boys, for example, regularly out-sprint female Olympians. Many high school boys, now we're talking the elites in high school, I wasn't one of those, but the really fine male athletes in high school, they could run faster than female Olympians. And they're in high school. In 2016, for example, American female sprinter Allison Felix, Miss Felix, earned an Olympic gold medal in the women's 400-meter race. Miss Felix is a wonderful athlete. A year later, after she won a gold medal, more than 285 American teenage boys logged a faster 400-meter time than Miss Felix. Don't take my word for it. It came from a study done at Duke University. More than 4,300 adult male athletes across America clocked faster 400-meter times than Ms. Felix. And she was an Olympian. And many Olympic
As a matter of fact, to put this into a litmus test, go to those videos, watch them. They are still available on YouTube. Pick up a video of them in the athletic meeting, whether it's 100 meter, 200 meter, or 400 meters. Play 400 meters for men. Play 400 meters for women. You are going to see that the last man that did not get any medal, that did not feature in the medals, actually ran faster than Felix. It's the same with Fraser Price, who, and I'm citing Fraser Price because you know that she was the Olympic gold medalist in 2008, 2012. And then Fraser Price in this generation is one of the most decorated women. You look at that in 2013, she became the world champion, and I think in 2009 as well. And then she repeated the feat, if I'm not mistaken. In 2016, she became number 2 to Elaine Thompson. In 2021, she became number 2 or number 3. So she's quite decorated in terms of medals. So when you look at how consistent Fraser Price has been, and you look at when she ran at her best in 2008, winning the gold medal, 2012, winning the gold medal of 100 meters. Look then, turn to the men. Don't compare her to Bolt. Look at the last man that came in. What speed did they do? Contrast that speed with the 10:70 by which Fraser Price won the Olympics. You see that the last man was probably 10:11 or 10:12, much faster than Fraser Price. This is the evidence supporting what Kennedy is saying here. That is why it is nothing short of mischievous to suggest that trans women, which are biological men, should be allowed in a women's sports. If we are not intending to destroy a women's sports, then this mental delusion should not be mainstreamed at all. Which mental delusion? The delusion that people who are stronger from birth should now be allowed to compete with people who biologically, physically, are much weaker than them by reason of how they have been born. It's nothing short of daylight robbery, and we cannot endorse it without ourselves practicing delusion. That's what I mean by delusion in this context. Very important, because I don't want to be misquoted.
Swimming events, the female world record holder wouldn't even qualify to compete against men. In strength-based sports such as weightlifting,
I'm going to rewind this so that you can get the context of what he's saying here.
Erica clocked faster 400-meter times than Ms. Felix, and she was an Olympian. In many Olympic track or swimming events, the female world record holder wouldn't even qualify to compete against men. In strength-based sports such as weightlifting, men outperform elite women in the same weight class by as much as 30%. Activists try to distract from biological reality by claiming that men lose their advantages over women when the men begin taking cross-sex hormones. That's not true. The differences between men and women begin in the womb. And no amount of hormone treatments or surgeries can undo those. Estrogen shots don't shrink a man's heart or his lungs.
Did you hear
Nor
that?
do they change the structure of the pelvis or the size of a skeleton. Nor do they change your height.
Now, this is very important, because remember, the size of the pelvis reduces the woman's ability to kick a ball. Okay, reduces the woman's ability to walk as firm and strong as a man does, which then means it creates some sort of a limitation in sprinting sports, in sports like football, in sports like cycling. That men will be able to kick faster, to run faster. The size of men, of course, as he mentioned it, the size of the heart of the man, the size of the lungs of the man. These are added advantage that there is no amount of shots that you can take to reduce your heart, to reduce your lungs. So it's just nothing but an ideologue's propaganda that if you are a biologically born male, you can take estrogen shots and they would be able to feminize you adequately, that you lose the advantage which you had against women. I love it that Kennedy brought this to the Senate and he led these facts for, because oftentimes we are arguing amiss. People are arguing based on emotions, not based on facts. Observe what Kennedy is doing here. This is well-researched information which you yourself can take the opportunity to research it for yourself and come to your own independent conclusions. Okay? This is very, very important because in society we need to be able to say why we believe what we believe, why we think the way we do, vis-a-vis people who are coming with primitive way of doing things, where they say, well, I don't believe it and that's it, or I believe this way and that's it. You get the point? People are just dismissive of other people's views without necessarily checking their own prejudices, because your belief system could be entirely based on your own prejudices. And if that is the case, it means then obviously you are thinking within the box. You have not thought outside the box. This is very, very important. Many people have not challenged their own prejudices, their own assumptions. It doesn't have to be a prejudice. Why do you believe what you believe? Why do you think the way that you do? Why do you do things the way that you do? Some people never come to themselves and ask themselves these questions to adequately to be able to effect a change in their own individual lives. And this is problematic. Stephen Covey talks about it where in a book of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he talks about paradigm shifting. This is very, very necessary. Let's continue. For if you are to be objective, you do require a paradigm shifting.
One study revealed that Men who have been taking cross-sex hormone treatments for 2 years can still run 12% faster and do 10% more push-ups on average than the women. That's just a biological fact. If you think that's misogynistic, curse our Creator if you have the courage. It's just a biological fact. Perhaps that's why the University of Pennsylvania swimmer, you've heard of her, when she first competed, her name was William Thomas. She was a male. She is now a transgender female, very prominent athlete. She now goes by Leah Thomas. She went from being the 554th ranked man in swimming to a top-ranked woman in the 200-yard freestyle when she was allowed to compete with biological women as a transgender female.
That's daylight robbery.
At least it's in swimming, each athlete gets their own lane. A mediocre male athlete's transition into a top-tier female athlete kills the dreams and it kills and steals the scholarships of biological women.
That's true.
I'll talk more about that later. But at least the female swimmers aren't usually in physical danger because everybody's got their lane.
Sure,
Contact sports are
fair enough.
whole different thing. Transgender athletes have seriously injured female competitors on several occasions, as President Biden's and these activist movement have been forced on many of our schools. In May 2023, for example, about a year ago, a high school volleyball player in North Carolina sued her state's high school athletics association after a transgender player, transgender female, born a biological male, spiked the ball in her face. Boom, hit her right in the face. She got a concussion. She's suffering from long-term physical and mental injuries. Not just physical injuries, mental injuries. Last October, a high school senior in California suffered a season-ending concussion after a transgender, born biological male, now a transgender female, after a transgender volleyball player spiked the ball and hit this young woman in the face during the game. She couldn't play high school volleyball anymore.
These videos to which Kennedy is referring here went viral. And my question is, at what point in time do we stop this carnage? Because, within our societies, it doesn't matter whether you live in America or in my country, South Africa. Within our societies, we portray ourselves to be protective of women, to be into women empowerment, to treat women with respect, to basically protect the women's species, not to allow abuse of any kind against them. But then we will allow it in the name of sport, where we have a trans woman, a biological man, spiking a ball straight into the face. Such a woman had a concussion. And in one game, well, Kennedy will touch on that shortly, but this one he's referring to right here, Riley Gaines even led evidence in the Senate on it. And I made a video about it because that went viral, and that woman can no longer play. Her entire college sporting days have been shattered. Her entire dreams have been shattered simply because she encountered a biological male who now is identifying as a woman, who is being allowed to play amongst women. How sincere are we when we are making these decisions, when we are supporting these ideologues to bully? Because this, for me, is nothing short of bullying, an attempt to annihilate women's sport.
This February, a girls' basketball team in Massachusetts forfeited a game They said, no mas. We quit. We can't go on. They forfeited a game after a transgender athlete, biological male, transgender female, injured 3 female players.
Can you imagine
the other team
that?
was going to run out of players, so they had to quit. And the coaches were worried that more of their players were going to be hurt. Now, how many women and girls are going to be rushed to the hospital while activists and President Biden create safe places in which transgender athletes can hurt female athletes as a matter of course?
And induce grievous bodily harm to these women. How are we going to sit back and do nothing and say nothing about it and pretend as though this is okay?
Asking that question. Some activists say that a biological man, as I indicated, some activists may say that a biological man has the same physicality as a biological woman. Put down the bomb if you believe that, but this is America. You're entitled to say what you want. And some say that biological man doesn't have any advantage physically as over a biological female. But that doesn't change the laws of nature. That doesn't change the laws of science.
That's true.
Doesn't change the laws of anatomy.
Very true.
The truth is that a woman's bone doesn't care that the person who snapped it identifies as a woman or a man or whatever. They just know their bone's broken. American female.
But Kennedy is quite funny. Do you hear that? How he places this? The truth is, a woman's bones do not care who snaps them, whether they identify as a man or a woman. It's immaterial. The bottom line is that woman has now suffered grievous bodily harm, a career-altering injury, which may dash so many dreams. Why are we allowing it?
Athletes are not lab rats. They're not lab rats we can scan or whatever. They just know their bone's broken. American female athletes are not lab rats. They're not lab rats we can subject to a social experiment. They have goals and dreams too. And they've worked hard too to develop their skills, to earn scholarships, to win championships. No girl, no woman, no female in America should end up on the bench with her arm in a sling because the Biden administration wanted a biological man to feel included. Broken bones will heal in most cases. But transgender athletes have also inflicted a different kind of pain on female athletes. A pain that's a lot harder to mend. I'm thinking of the pain felt by athletes like the swimmer from the University of Florida who missed out on the chance to swim as an All-American because Ms. Leah Thomas, formerly Mr. William Thomas, who ranked 554th as a man in swimming, took her place and dominated the women's race. We should all worry about the swimmer from Virginia Tech who didn't get to compete in the final race of her.
So as a biological male that Thomas is, he stood no chance of getting the scholarship or being in the top 2. But he saw a way in which he could actually be number 1 and get that scholarship by simply identifying as a woman. In which universe, alternate universe, is this absurd way of thinking acceptable? Why are people such cowards, afraid of being labeled homophobic, transphobic, and all the nonsense that you see online, but yet the facts at our disposal? You see, we must never ever confuse our opinion with facts. Facts don't care about your emotions or your feelings. The facts at our disposal are the ones that Kennedy is busy reading over here. At what point in time then do we look at those facts and convince ourselves that no, male rights and their inclusion in a woman's sport is more important to make them comfortable than the very women whom fought for their rights to be recognized, even to participate at college sports, to have the same rights as male, in many areas that were dominated by males. And now all what males need to do to dash those very dreams that have been achieved through sweat, blood, and tears, they simply need to identify as a woman. Does that make sense?
Collegiate career. That's a race you'll never get back because Ms. Thomas stole her spot in the pool. How discouraging. How discouraging it must be to dedicate your life to a goal, only to have these activists and President Biden rip them away because institutions are unwilling to accept the immutable facts of anatomy. I reject the proposition. I do. I reject the proposition that it's okay that some young athlete in Louisiana who spends hours in the pool or in the gym each night has to have her college championship taken away by a biological boy because the Biden administration says so. I reject that.
I'm with Kennedy here. I reject the proposition with contempt that it deserves. Am I saying that people who are trans cannot be trans? I can't tell anybody what to choose. That's their choice, for which one day they are going to appear before their maker and account for it. But the point I'm making right now, it cannot be correct that my choice is going to detrimentally affect someone else's human rights and violate them. That's the point that I'm making. I reject the proposition that it is okay for people who have been born far superior in strength, having bigger organs than the others, to be allowed to compete, still carrying those very organs in their original state, to compete against people who have less competitive advantage than themselves. It doesn't make sense. Not at all. Doesn't make sense at all. I've seen a lot of lies online where a lot of trans people have come up with theories that do not make sense. I love how Kennedy has done this. Well-researched, well-documented, Senator Kennedy, much appreciated. Facts, as I've already indicated, do not care about your feelings. So please comment on the video below. Tell me what you think. And your thoughts, as I've said, should be informed by facts, not by your emotions. Yes, of course, you're allowed to have your opinion, because after I've listened to Kennedy, I've formulated my own opinion. After Kennedy has engaged with those facts, he also formulated his own opinion. So your opinion is very important. As long as we know that's what it is, it's an opinion, and hopefully your opinion is based on facts. Just comment down below. Tell me what you think. Don't forget to like the video. If you have not yet subscribed, please do. Until the next video, ciao, ciao.